History Chapter 2, Important Question Answers. Kings, Farmers and Towns. Q1. Describe the salient features of Mahajanapadas. OR state any three features of Mahajanapadas. Ans. The 6th century BCE was marked by 16 states known as Mahajanapadas. Amongst the most important ones were Magadha, Koshala, Kuru, Panchala, Gandhara and Avanti. Salient features of Mahajanapadas were as follows. 1. Most Mahajanapadas were ruled by kings and occupied the Ganga-Yamuna Doab region. Each Mahajanapada had a capital city, which was often fortified. For example, Magadha had its capital at Rajgir, which was fortified. 2. The Dharma Sutras, compiled by Brahmanas, laid down norms for governance by rulers. Ideally, rulers of these Janapadas were expected to be Kshatriyas. 3. Maintaining fortified cities, armies and bureaucracy required resources. The Dharmasutras advised rulers to collect taxes and tributes from cultivators, artisans and traders. In some cases, resources were even procured from pastoralists and forest people. 4. Expansion of the Mahajanapada at the expense of its neighbor was a common feature, for example Magadha. Moreover, raids on neighboring states for acquiring wealth were recognized as legitimate. 5. The economies of the Mahajanapadas were marked by intensive and extensive pursuit of agriculture, individual holding of land, increased craft production and urbanization. They were reflective of economic differentiation, as was evident from terms like Grahapati the owner, master or head of a household, Villalar landowners, Uzavar plowmen and Adimal slaves, Dasa. These rankings were evident even in the social sphere. 6. Gradually, some Mahajanapadas acquired standing armies, and maintained regular bureaucracies. Others continued to depend on militia recruited from peasantry. Q2. How did Magadha become the most powerful Mahajanapada? Or how do the modern historians explain the development and growth of Magadhan power? Explain. CBSE 2012. Or how did Magadha become the most powerful Mahajanapada between the 6th and the 4th centuries BCE? Give 2 reasons. CBSE 2014. Or describe briefly how the Mauryan Empire was regarded as a major landmark in history. CBSE 2010. Or how do the modern historians explain the development of Magadha as the most powerful Mahajanapada? CBSE 2013. Or Magadha became the most powerful Mahajanapada between 6th and 4th centuries BCE. Substantiate the statement. CBSE 2016. Ans. Modern historians explain the rise of Magadha as the most powerful Mahajanapada in a variety of ways, which are as follows. I. Magadha was a prosperous kingdom. It had exceptionally fertile land where agriculture was productive. E. Magadha lay at the center of the middle Gangetic plain. The alluvial soil proved fertile for agriculture. This enabled peasants to produce considerable surplus, which could be taken by rulers in the form of taxes. E. Iron mines, present-day Jharkhand, were accessible and provided resources for tools and weapons. IV. Elephants, an important component of the army, were found in forests in the region. Magadha was the first state to use elephants on a large scale against its neighbors. V. Ambitious kings, of whom Bimbisara, Ajatsattu, and Mahapadma Nanda are the best known, and their ministers, who helped implement their policies. V. Both the Rajgir and Pataliputra capitals of the Magadha Empire were strategically located. Rajgir became impenetrable, surrounded by 5 hills. Q3. List some of the problems faced by epigraphists. Or to what extent the epigraphists face limitations of inscriptional evidence. List a few. Or give 2 limitations of inscriptional evidence to reconstruct the past. Ans. Epigraphy is the study of inscriptions. The job of an epigraphist is to study and find out the history of the time on the basis of epigraphs. The problems faced by epigraphists are: 1. Technical limitations. For example, letters may be very faintly engraved and thus reconstructions are uncertain. 2. Inscriptions may be damaged or letters missing. 3. It is not easy for the epigraphist to be sure about the exact meaning of the words in the inscriptions because of specificity of a word to a particular place or time. 4. Though several thousand inscriptions have been discovered, not all have been deciphered, published and translated. 5. Many inscriptions have not survived ravages of time, and therefore what is available is probably only a fraction of what was inscribed. They are therefore bound to be substantial gaps in reconstruction. 6. The fundamental problem is also that not everything that we today consider politically and economically significant was necessarily recorded in inscriptions, for example, routine agricultural practices, joys and sorrows of ordinary people. They convey royal orders, decisions regarding social, religious and administrative matters to officials and people in general, for example, Ashokan inscriptions. 7. Inscriptions praise the achievements and attributes of kings and conquerors, and never speak of their defects and weaknesses, for example, Allahabad inscription of Samudragupta. 8. Epigraphists have to constantly assess statements, add words to make meaning of sentences clear. 9. Epigraphists have to constantly match terms of content, style, language and paleography before dating and concluding that they were done by a particular ruler. Thus by themselves inscriptions are not sufficient source. Epigraphists have to tally with other perspectives to arrive at a better understanding of the past. Q4. What are the sources used by the historians to reconstruct Mauryan history? Or explain the sources used by historians to reconstruct the history of Mauryan Empire. CBSE 2017-2019, or describe the sources used to construct the history of Mauryan Empire. CBSE 2012, or historians have used a variety of sources to reconstruct the history of the Mauryan Empire. State any 4 such sources. CBSE 2015, or explain the sources used by historians to reconstruct the history of Mauryan period. CBSE 2016. Ans. The sources used by the historians to reconstruct Mauryan history are as follows. I. Historians have used a variety of sources to reconstruct the history of the Mauryan Empire. These include archaeological finds, especially sculpture. E. One source is the account of book Indica written by Megasthenes, a Greek ambassador who visited to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. E. Another source is the Arthashastra, parts of which were probably composed by Kautilya or Chanakya. He is traditionally believed to be the minister of Chandragupta. IV. The Mauryas are mentioned in later Buddhist, Jaina and Puranic literature, as well as in Sanskrit literary works. V. The inscriptions of Ashoka, c. 272-268-231 BCE, on rocks and pillars are often regarded as amongst the most valuable sources. V. Archaeological excavations are an invaluable source of information on the material culture. For example, those unearthed at Pataliputra, finds of northern black polished ware and coins. Q5. Discuss or explain the main features of the Mauryan administration. Which of these elements are evident in the Ashokan inscriptions that you have studied? Ans. Ashokan inscriptions mention all the main features of the administration of the Mauryan Empire. Thus, the features of the administration are evident in the inscriptions of the Ashokan age. The important features of the same are as follow. 1. There were 5 major political centers in the empire: the capital Pataliputra, and the provincial centers of Taxila, Ujjayini, Tosali, Orissa, and Swarnagiri, Karnataka. Virtually the same message was engraved everywhere. It seems that vast empire had a uniform administrative system. 2. Among the officers at the district, discussed in Ashoka's inscription, is the Rajuka, responsible for surveying and assessing land and administering justice. The IV Pillar Edict of Ashoka is entirely addressed to the Rajukas. They are advised on their behavior towards the people and rules regarding reward and punishment. 3. Among the other officials, mentioned in Ashokan inscriptions, are those connected with the administration of the city, and those who worked among frontier peoples. 4. In addition to these were officials referred to as Dhamma Mahamattas. One of their functions was to record gifts and donations made to religious establishments, in addition to spreading the message of Dhamma. 5. Inscriptions also mention an important official Pativedakas. The epigraphists have translated the term as reporter. His main function was to report to the king about the affairs of the people anywhere and at all times. 6. Committee and subcommittees were formed to run the administration and safety of boundaries. Megasthenes has mentioned that there were 1 committee and 6 subcommittees. The 6 subcommittees and their areas of activities are as follows. I. The first subcommittee looked after Navy. E. The second subcommittee looked after transport and communications. E. The third subcommittee looked after infantry. IV. The fourth subcommittee had the responsibility of horses. We, the fifth, had the responsibility of chariots. We, the sixth, had the responsibility of elephants. 7. Strong network of roads and communications were established. It is notable that no large empire can be maintained in the absence of the same. Q6. Describe briefly any two strategies for increasing agricultural production from 6th century BCE to 6th century CE. CBSE 2010, or to what extent were agricultural practices transformed from 6th century BCE? Explain briefly. CBSE 2011, or describe strategies to increase agricultural production in c. 600 BCE to 600 CE. CBSE 2010, 2017, or to what extent were agricultural practices transformed in the period under consideration? CBSE 2010, 2011. Ans. The period 6th century BCE to 6th century CE was marked by the tremendous expansion of economy in agriculture sector. Among the factors which transformed agricultural practices was the increasing use of iron implements. The iron-tipped plowshare was used to turn alluvial soil in areas which had high rainfall, e.g. the mid-Gangetic plain. The use of iron plowshare was restricted to only certain parts of the subcontinent. Areas which were semi-arid, such as parts of Punjab and Rajasthan and hilly tracts in the northeastern and central parts of the subcontinent, did not adopt it. They practiced hoe, a hand tool, agriculture, which was much better suited to the terrain. Introduction of system of paddy transplantation led to intensive cultivation of rice and consequently increased yields, e.g. in the Gangetic plain. Increased knowledge about techniques of agriculture. Another strategy adopted was use of irrigation, through wells, tanks and a few canals. Communities, as well as individuals, organized the construction of irrigation works. Yet another strategy was increase of revenue by settling new lands. The Arthashastra lays great stress on increasing the revenue potential by settling new lands. Peasants' migrations from overpopulated areas were to be encouraged. One of the Ashokan edicts speaks of the deportation of prisoners after the Kalinga War. These may have been used for establishing new settlements, but this seems to be the only instance of its kind. In some parts of Ganga Valley, production of paddy was highly increased by the introduction of transplantation. Other way was by granting virgin lands to religious people, for example Brahmanas. Terms like Gahapati, used to designate large landowners and small peasants, and Dasa, for agricultural laborers, reveal benefits were very uneven. Early Tamil literature also mentions different categories based on access to land, for example large landowners or Veller, plowmen or Uzavar and slaves or Adimai. Q7. Why is the 6th century BCE often regarded as a major turning point in the early Indian history? CBSE 2015, or the mid-1st millennium BCE is often regarded as a major turning point in world history. Justify. CBSE 2016, or give two reasons why the 6th century BCE is often regarded as a major turning point in early Indian history. CBSE 2008. Ans. 6th century BCE is often regarded as a major turning point in early Indian history because 1. It is an era associated with the emergence of early states. Early Buddhist and Jaina texts among other things mention 16 states or Mahajanapadas, such as Koshala, Magadha, Kuru, Avanti. 2. The period was marked by second urbanization, a sharp increase in number of settlements, accompanied by growth of cities and towns. 3. The period was of tremendous expansion of economy, agriculture becoming the cause of economic prosperity, aided by the use of iron plowshare and improved skills like rice transplantation. 4. It was marked by a more economically and socially stratified society. 5. It also witnessed the diverse systems of thought including Buddhism and Jainism. Q8. Examine the contribution of James Prinsep in the study of Indian history. Or why is James Prinsep's contribution considered as the historic development in the Indian epigraphy? CBSE 2015. Ans. One of the most momentous developments in the study of Indian history was the study of epigraphy during 1830s. This was when James Prinsep, an officer in the Mint of the East India Company, deciphered Brahmi and Kharosti, two scripts used in the earliest inscriptions and coins. He found that most of these mentioned a king referred to as Piyadasi, meaning pleasant to behold. A few inscriptions also referred to the king as Ashoka, one of the most famous rulers known from Buddhist texts. This gave a new direction to investigate into early Indian political history as European and Indian scholars used inscriptions and texts composed in a variety of languages. This tried to reconstruct the lineages of major dynasties that had ruled the subcontinent. Subsequently, they tried to investigate whether there were connections between political changes and economic and social developments. It was soon realized that while there were links, these were not always simple or direct. Q9. The emergence of the Mauryan Empire was regarded as a major landmark. Give CBSE 2010 or why was Mauryan Empire regarded as a major landmark in the early Indian history? Ans. The emergence of the Mauryan Empire was regarded as a major landmark for the following reasons. 1. When historians began reconstructing early Indian history in the 19th century, India was under colonial rule. 2. Historians found the possibility that there was a vast empire in early India. 3. Some archaeological finds associated with the Mauryas, for example fragments of stone pillar including stone sculpture, were examples of spectacular art. 4. Historians found the message on Ashokan inscriptions different from that of most other rulers, suggesting that Ashoka was more powerful and industrious. He was also more humble than later rulers, who adopted bigger titles. 5. Nationalist leaders in the 20th century regarded the Mauryan Empire as a symbol of India's glorious past and source of pride. Q10. Describe the sources of reconstructing the histories of the Gupta rulers. CBSE 2009, 2010 or what are the sources of reconstruction of Gupta period? Ans. There are several sources of information about the Gupta Empire, which is often referred to as the Golden Age of India. The major sources include are as follows. 1. Archaeological evidence. Excavations at sites like Ujjain, Pataliputra, and Allahabad provide evidence of Gupta architecture, inscriptions, and coins that help reconstruct the empire's history. 2. Notable Gupta rulers, such as Chandragupta I and Samudragupta, are depicted on coins, which give insights into their rule and military victories. 3. Inscriptions including Prashasti, the Allahabad pillar inscription of Samudragupta, written by his court poet Harishena, is one of the most important sources. It records the military achievements of Samudragupta and his patronage of arts and culture. 4. Literary sources. Ancient texts such as the Puranas and the writings of Chinese travelers like Faxian and Shanzang provide valuable details about the political, social, and economic aspects of the Gupta Empire. These sources mention the prosperity and stability during the reign of Gupta rulers. 5. Works of Kalidasa and Vishakhadatta are also important literary sources to construct histories of Gupta rulers. Q11. What do you mean by numismatics? How has the study of coins helped the numismatists to reconstruct possible commercial network? Discuss. CBSE 2014 or describe the features of coinage in India from 6th century BCE to 6th century CE. CBSE 2019 or discuss briefly coins as a source during 6th century BCE to 6th century CE. Ans. Study of coins is called numismatics. Excavations at numerous sites have revealed hoards of coins and coin molds made of burnt clay relating to the period. 1. Since coins were used for purposes such as donations, as mode of payment and medium of exchange, they also throw considerable light on economic history. 2. Some coins bear names and images of rulers, e.g. Indo-Greek coins, they help in the reconstruction of chronology of dynasties. Others contain religious symbols and legends. All of these throw light on art and religion of their times. 3. The earliest coins were punch-marked coins. Attempts were made to identify the symbols with specific ruling dynasties including the Mauryas. Some coins were issued by guilds of merchants and goldsmiths. This shows crafts and commercial activities became important. 4. Coins helped transactions on a large scale and contributed to trade. Largest number of coins belong to the post-Maurya times. These were made of lead, cotton, copper, bronze, silver and gold. 5. The first gold coins were issued by Kushanas. These were virtually identical in weight with those issued by contemporary Roman emperors and Parthian rulers of Iran. The use of gold coins indicates the enormous volume of transactions. 6. Thousands of copper coins belonging to Yudayas were recovered by archaeologists from Haryana and Punjab. 7. Some of the most spectacular gold coins, remarkable for their purity, belong to the Gupta rulers. These coins facilitated long-distance transactions. 8. However, from the 6th century CE onwards, finds of gold coins tend to taper off, leading to historians speculating about economic crisis. Q12. Explain how Kharosti was deciphered. CBSE 2012-13. Ans. Most scripts used to write modern Indian languages are derived from Brahmi. Brahmi was the script used in most Ashokan inscriptions. From the late 18th century, European scholars, aided by Indian pundits, worked backwards from contemporary Bengali and Devanagari manuscripts, comparing their letters with older specimens. Scholars, who studied early inscriptions, sometimes assumed these were in Sanskrit, although the earliest inscriptions were, in fact, in Prakrit. It was only after decades of painstaking investigations by several epigraphists that James Prinsep was able to decipher language of Kharosti inscriptions as Prakrit. Q13. How did Kushana rulers exemplify themselves with the high status? CBSE 2015. Ans. 1. One means of claiming high status was to identify with a variety of deities. 2. The notions of kingship they wished to project are seen in their coins and sculptures. 3. Colossal statues of Kushana rulers were installed in Mathura and Afghanistan. 4. They projected themselves godlike. 5. They adopted the tide of Devaputra or son of God.